Today you're going to be listening to Beethoven's Second Symphony, and specifically the Scherzo and the Trio sections. Now, as we start talking about this, you might be wondering, why is it called the Scherzo and the Trio? What do those terms mean, and what does it say about the piece? And predominantly, I think that has to do with the form of the piece, which in this case is something called binary. The form of a piece, I think, is just how the composer decided to compose in sections, where different themes are, where they come back. And in binary form, there are usually kind of two main themes, two main sections that are related to each other, but not always necessarily exactly the same. So they'll have their own themes, but they'll probably be related. Another theme might come back, like the first theme might come into the second one a little bit, or they'll have similar rhythms and harmonies at times, but they can also be very different in order to make contrast. In this piece, in the Scherzo and the Trio, within the Scherzo and the Trio, they're each their own set of binary. They each have their own two sections with their own two themes, which is really cool because then you can take all those together and contrast them and see how they relate to each other. Now, for the main thing, there's this one main theme, one for the Scherzo and one for the Trio. Typically, it's going to be in the first refrain, and I'm going to relate this to fire. This is like when your fire's going strong. You know, when you first make a fire, say we're having a campfire at home, and you first make it, and you light that first leaf and stick it in with the twigs, it just goes straight up, right? I mean, if everything's dry. And it just consumes everything around it, and you have this big raging fire in the beginning. And for the Scherzo, that's in this first section. There's big, full, heavy chords, and you've got the brass and the strings playing together in these huge orchestrations of very powerful, strong chords with some string melody in between them. And that's our first main theme. It repeats, you hear it again, so it's really strengthened in your memory. But then someone kind of tries to put out the fire, and the theme changes. That section ends, we get into our second section of the Scherzo, and someone's dousing the fire with water. It's totally different. It looks like it has a different theme. It doesn't necessarily go completely different. There's still some things that resemble it a little bit, and that's like the embers of the fire. You've tried to put it out, but you can't quite get it all out yet. It takes a few tries, and sometimes it doesn't always happen at all after you're trying to put out the fire. There's still these little glows, little hints back to what the fire was originally. And similarly, in this second section, there is little rhythmic details and things that hint back to the previous form and the previous theme in that other section. And then right when you think the fire's completely out, it kind of gets you. And this second theme sort of morphs into the first theme, and then suddenly you have these big chords again, and the fire's back. But if you'll notice, the fire is also a little bit different. It's smaller now. And that's because these same strong chords come back, and the theme is really strong for a little while, but then instead of ending the same way, it sort of fades out and changes. Just like once the fire's out, when you're trying to put it out and you have those embers and you think you're good, but then suddenly it comes back, like this main theme comes back, but it's not quite the same, and usually it only comes back in a smaller flame and pieces here and there, and you can still see the embers around the edge. And that's because now the two sections have influenced each other. The strong fire and the fire trying to be put out have kind of crossed and mixed and become one. And that's what this looks like. Now, the Trio does a similar thing. The melodies are a little bit different, but it similarly has that same first big fire going to the embers, going to the littler fire where they've kind of joined. But the really cool thing is that when you put the Scherzo and the Trio together, they also do this. That main Scherzo theme with the big full chords and the brass and the strings makes the big main theme of the whole Scherzo, in my opinion. And then the Trio contrasts it, but after you do the Trio, you come back and repeat parts of the Scherzo, which brings that main theme back, which I just think is so cool. And so as you listen to the piece, you can really listen to that main melody and look and listen to try and find those similarities and differences, and then listen for that theme to come back, listen for the fire to come back. So I'd really encourage you to take that and to listen to it, and hope you enjoy the piece.